Okay. Hi, everyone, and welcome. My name is Angel. I grew up in a cult, so I wanted to make this video to talk about why people start cults, how it looks, what you should look out for, and how you can tell when somebody is sort of starting one or you're starting to wonder if you're in one. And to me, because I was born and raised in a cult, it has been very obvious to me what it looks like when somebody starts a cult. And so I've been in the yoga community and the spiritual community for a long time, for maybe about 13 years. And there is a lot of predatory behavior spiritually and consciously when it comes to those communities. And so having left a cult, it was very easy for me to spot who was trying to recruit me into another cult and who was acting like the cult leader. And it was so obvious to me what the hierarchy was. And it was just so obvious to me that these were cults. And when I would try to say this to friends or people who were inviting me to these places, I would be like, you guys, obviously this is a cult and this is what's going to happen. And I could sort of predict it. And when it would happen, they would be like, Angel, how did you know? And for me, I was like, well, how did you not know? And we all have blind spots. I remember having a conversation with a friend when I was like 28 or 29. And I was talking about how I needed some money to start this like business idea. And I just couldn't figure out, I needed like $10,000. And he was like, Angel, get a loan from the bank. And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, just walk into the bank, give him your pitch deck, your business idea, and then, get a loan. And it had never crossed my mind, because I didn't grow up with that knowledge that a bank could give you a business loan. And, for a regular 28, 29-year-old, that would be really common knowledge. And for me, it was a blind spot. It blew my mind. I had never once thought of it. And so this is, I feel, something that's very obvious to me, but a blind spot for a lot of people. So I want to talk very specifically about what it looks like when someone is starting a new age cult. This is not about religious cults. Religious cults generally look the same, and it's very obvious because it's, circled around religion. And you have the top of the pyramid, because every cult is a pyramid. The top of the pyramid is God. And these new age cults are the same, but the way that they prey on you is different. And so I just want to give as much information as I can about what I see, so that perhaps if this is your blind spot, you can see it very clearly too. And it is end of May 2025. And there was just a podcast that came out where this man said that, one of the gods came to him and told him to impregnate 2 women, and now he's going to have 2 wives. And to me, I was surprised that people were surprised that this man is an obvious predator, because I had listened to this podcast a long, long time ago, maybe like 5 years or maybe more, but a long time ago. I didn't know anything about this person. I listened to one episode, and it was incredibly clear to me that this man was a predator. And so I didn't hear about him. I didn't think about it, and then jump to now hearing this. I'm like, yeah, that's par for the course, because when cults start, they don't start with crazy. They try and set up a structure so that by the time they introduce crazy, there is already a funnel for it to go through. So this will be hopefully fairly involved with a lot of information. I have my computer with me, because when there is information that I really just want to get right, then I have to look at it, because I had to write it all down. Some of these videos I'll just like free flow, because I have a lot of the subject in mind. This one to me was very important for me to give you all of this information. So trigger warning, trigger warning-ish, nothing too crazy in this one. I think I'll dive in deeply to the second one. But if anything does come up, I mean, anything surrounding cults is always going to be something in here. But hopefully it's useful information for you, and it can keep you safe or the people that you love safe from cults. So again, I was born into the children of God. It was started by a man, And then in 1996, it was handed over to a woman. And at that point, I was 11. And when it was handed over to the woman, the method of control changed a little bit, but the hierarchy did not. And the devotion of the people in the cult also didn't change. And that surprised me. That surprised me later as an adult. As an 11-year-old, I was not surprised. So I believe myself to be a valuable voice and fairly recovered from my cult upbringing for the following 3 reasons. Number 1 is I do not consider myself to be better than you, which is something that all cult leaders believe and all cult members believe. Number 2, I'm not afraid that you will see me as I am. This is just me coming to you. I'm just going to talk, share the information. I don't need you to see me in a different way. Some people will see me and think that I'm lying or I'm this or I'm that, and that's fine. Number 3 is I do not need you to obey me. I don't think I'm going to give you any instruction, and I don't need you to agree with me. You can just take the information and think, huh, or you can take the information and be like, no. And it is what it is, but I would like to give it. And any cult member or leader will consider themselves to be better than you, will have started the cult or be a part of the cult because they are afraid that you will see them as they are without the performance. And they do need you to obey them. If they're a leader and if they're a cult member, they need you to agree with them. Okay, so I'm just going to dive right in. Most cults rarely start out destructive. They always start as a loving community. Nobody ever joins a cult. People join a community of like-minded people. They always do end up being very destructive though, because the goal of the cult is to cover one of the wounds of the leader. And healing is an internal process. And when people start a cult, they are trying to externalize their healing process. So instead of healing from within to feel valuable, I will simply convince a bunch of people to tell me that I'm valuable. People who start cults tend to be very resentful of having to heal wounds that they did not create. And it's important to know that we all have wounds that we did not create. So healing is cyclical, which means if I recover from something, I'm going to find something else that I'm not recovered from. And then I'm going to try and recover from that. And then I find something else. And it can feel really difficult to try to continue healing and putting effort into healing. And sometimes that cycle becomes too painful. And if you feel sort of shame about yourself, then that's when you switch. You decide, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm recovered enough. And now I am an authority. And a cult is a system of control that is disguised as care. It generally centers around a self-deified leader or system of belief centered around discipline, purity, exceptionalism, or ascension. And it demands loyalty regardless of harm experienced while being a member. Cults are always in a hierarchy, and they are masquerading as a community. The longer you stay in the cult, the more you become disconnected from yourself, and your body, mind, and emotions become communal property. Men and women always start cults for different reasons, but it is always some variation of the following 3 wounds, which is no one will hurt me again, no one will leave me again, or I am never going to be unimportant again. It is always centered around one of those 3 wounds. And they are, again, no one is going to hurt me again, no one is going to leave me again, or I will never be unimportant again. Cult leaders want to feel valued, loved, and powerful, as do I. So the desire is not bad. We all want to feel valued, loved, and powerful. Cult leaders, though, make it your problem that they want to feel that. As opposed to people who are healthy or healing, they will know that that's an internal job, not a job to externalize. If you do end up externalizing it, which these cult leaders do, they will never quit it. So I have never, if you have, then tell me. But I've never seen a cult leader that has quit. A cult leader who has turned that externalization back into internalization and then dissolved the cult. The members either leave or they die. And that's the only way to get out of a cult is either you leave or you die. But the cult leader never quits. I would rather you leave, not die. Actually, just don't join. But let's look at why people start cults. So terminology-wise, I'm going to use male, female, or man, woman pronouns because that's what I have experience with. So I have experience with a man who identified as a man starting this cult, and then I have experience with women identifying as women starting cults. So hopefully it's not too distracting, and please take it as like energetic. So it's masculine energy, feminine energy, and that's how I mean those terms. Okay, so when a woman starts a cult, I'm going to start with the women and I'm going to get to the men. That's how life chooses to do it. So that's how I will choose to do it too. So when a woman starts a cult, it is often rooted in a pain that nobody either saw her or nobody rescued her. She seeks intimacy and reverence, the healing of her internal wound through social and emotional fusion. She becomes the sacred mother, the witch, the goddess or queen. She thinks no one will hurt me again, no one will leave me again, or I will never be unimportant again. Her power lies in emotional magnetism. She makes you feel seen and part of something loving, part of a safe community, until you disagree with her or you begin to shine brighter than her. She then takes this as betrayal. Disagreement or outshining her is when the falling out starts to happen. If there is an outside threat or turmoil, the way to combat it to her is through obedience to her hierarchy, having no doubts, and continued acknowledgement of her exalted persona. So if there's any outside threat, she's like, well, listen, just obey what I say, and then we're all going to be okay. When a man starts a cult, it is often rooted in guilt or shame that was never able to be expressed. He seeks legacy, control, and healing of his internal wound through worship and desire. He becomes the prophet, king, or divine masculine. His power lies in certainty. You, as the member, feel led until you ask questions that challenge their view of themselves. He will take this as defiance or disobedience. There can be a perceived outside threat that causes people to look to him, and the way to combat this threat, just like with the woman, is through obedience to his hierarchy and continued acknowledgement of his exalted persona. Both the man and the woman are often trying to outsource healing of their original wounds, which can present as wounded masculine or wounded feminine. So now we're going to get into different ways that a woman with a father wound or a patriarchal wound will start a cult. And again, this is not too comprehensive, but I think these are the most obvious ones because I want you to see it and be like, oh, I recognize that. Okay. So this is a woman with a patriarchal wound or a father wound. So cult number 1, she will present herself as having found her divine masculine within herself. If she sets up a cult in this era of her life, it will be very big on hustle culture, on choosing yourself, not needing men. It's very girl boss. It's very exclusive. It leans towards women, and it will look down on any woman who lives a different lifestyle or entertains men. Housewives or women perceived as subservient will present a threat, and it will become an us versus them because most cults will have an us versus them. If she does enter a relationship with a man, she will overpower him. She'll say things like he couldn't hold the container for the divine feminine. He's intimidated by women in their full power. She will control the group through social pressure, and the belief system is centered around discipline and exceptionalism. Second cult, number 2. She will enter her divine goddess era, and she'll tell you to empower yourself to fully step into your soft feminine. There'll be a lot of sexually forward presenting material from her. And all of this is to actually get male attention, and she wants to be picked. And once she is picked, the messaging will change. She will either disappear because she is now fused to this man, or her messaging will turn into what the man's messaging is. So if this woman starts a cult and it's all about softness and goddess. If the man comes in and the man is, let's say, a Christian, her message will then drift over to Christianity so that she matches the man. This cycle usually ends in about 2 to 7 years when inevitably she is no longer picked, at which point she'll come out with a how to get away from a narcissist content. And that's sort of the cycle, and I've seen that many, many, many times. Number 3, she will simply join a cult started by a man and will allow herself to become communal property to a certain extent in exchange for love and belonging. So now we're going to go into 2 ways a woman with a mother wound will start or join a cult. So the first part was father wound, this part is mother wound, woman with mother wound. So the first cult. This woman will start a community centered around service. She'll work herself to the bone in the name of helping others. She'll present herself as needing no things, no material things, and she'll ask the same from her followers, but she'll usually keep a few luxuries to herself. She'll also be very demanding to have assistance at the drop of a hat, and if you are not available, you will be shamed for not being as unselfish or as loving as her or others. The belief system here is centered around exceptionalism and self-sacrificial discipline. And if it is also religious, it'll also center around ascension. So you're doing all these things so that you can have a better afterlife. Cult number 2 from a woman with a matriarchal wound. She will start a cult around sisterhood, something that initially seems very inclusive, but it will be full of politics and infighting. She'll accuse others of being jealous of her. She'll dominate through bullying tactics and gossip. There may be humiliation rituals. There will be unethical behavior and lies surrounding money and romantic relationships. This group will be incredibly psychologically damaging. The belief system is centered around exceptionalism and purity through obedience. Woman number 3, a woman with a matriarchal wound who isn't starting a cult will join a cult started by a woman and try to prove her worth through service. She will join cult number 2 either way. So she was either going to join the second patriarchal cult started by the woman, which is the divine goddess one, or she'll end up joining the one I just described, the cult with the sisterhood that is actually very insidious. Okay, so that's the end of woman with patriarchal and matriarchal wounds. The woman who would join a cult, the woman with a patriarchal wound that wants to join a cult started by a man, will join this next first cult that I'm about to describe. And now we are going on to the men. When a man with a father wound starts or joins a cult, patriarchal wounds. Cult number 1, he becomes the ultimate father. He'll start with loving structure while creating a hierarchy where he is the sole authority. He'll present himself as wanting the best for you, the implication being that you are too lazy to take care of yourself, so he will assist you. He's wise, untouchable, unquestionable. This cult will be very heavy on self-discipline. So you get the hustle bros, you get the wake up at 2 a.m., take an ice bath, all that. He'll keep reign on his community through social shame. His followers are usually obsessed with proving masculinity. His followers will be mostly men with sun energy, trying to earn the approval of the father. Any man with softness is the enemy. This belief system is centered around exceptionalism and discipline, and if it's religious, then also ascension. If you're a good man, you get into heaven, or if you're a good man, you receive the virgins once you die. Cult number 2, of a man with a patriarchal wound. He enters his sacred masculine era. He'll speak the language of presence. He'll do yoga. He'll talk about divine masculine embodiment. He'll talk about divine feminine, but all while silently demanding worship. He sets himself up as a conscious king who loves women, and he puts women above him, but he secretly maintains the belief that women need to be led, and he is the one to do it, he or his followers. He will not be monogamous. His relationships with women are power plays. He has multiple sexual partners and desires to be seen as virile by other men. If you call him on his behavior, he'll say things like, she's in her wounded masculine, or she's in her wounded feminine. She couldn't hold the container for the divine masculine. The belief system is centered around exceptionalism and discipline of women who disobey through the practice of shunning. With this cult, it's very similar to the divine goddess lady. These two people with the patriarchal wounds, they find each other, they date each other, and then this man is the narcissist that she eventually talks about when he doesn't pick her any longer and he picks somebody else, because they are not, of course, monogamous. Okay. If a man with a father wound joins a cult, he will end up joining cult number 1, which I described, and he will try to connect and imitate the alpha, the self-described alpha. A man with a father wound will join a male-led cult and serve him, hoping to be chosen as second in command or heir. His self-worth is tied to being seen and acknowledged by the dominant male. And then this is where it shifts. Men with the matriarchal wound is actually very dangerous, and here's the trigger warning. Men with matriarchal wounds generally will punish through abuse because they couldn't punish their mothers. So they will then punish either other women or innocents. So there's the trigger warning. Cult number 1 of a man with a matriarchal wound. He builds a cult to be loved. His community is service-driven. He makes himself endlessly available in exchange for approval or praise. He will do charity work. Perhaps he'll move to a third world country, or he'll involve a third world country somehow. He desires to be seen as the savior. If you stop your admiration, he will collapse into victimhood, or he'll punish you with silence. There will be sexual power plays or abuse with sexually inexperienced people, including minors, because he feels he deserves some pleasure in exchange for all of his service. But he doesn't necessarily desire to be seen as a sexual creature, because that would contrast with his view of himself as savior. If he has access to children, this will be incredibly devastating. And there was somebody who was in the cult that I knew, Children of God. Children of God kicked him out. So in order to be kicked out of a pedophilic cult, you have to be really bad. This man then moved to a third world country and he set up an orphanage for young girls. The good news is he is now passed on. He is now dust. But he was this exact thing. Cult number 2. He creates a sensual healing space that becomes a hunting ground for wounded women. He uses intimacy, emotional or physical, as bait. He will say that he's offering healing or activation, but he has a hidden hunger to be mothered, desired, or adored. Boundaries are incredibly blurry. If he works with psychedelics, he will use them to set up trauma bonds while people are in a vulnerable space and feel safe. The group dynamic is often emotionally entangled and sexualized. He will ask for your secrets and will wait for the opportune moment to use it against you. He allows men to be in the cult as long as they do not threaten his ability to have the sexual partners of his choosing. He is similar to the second cult with the father wound, but the man with the father wound would like to be seen by other men as sexually virile, whereas a man with a mother wound wants to be sexually desired by women so that when he has sexual contact with them, he can violate their boundaries but claim that he had consent. This cult is centered around purity and exceptionalism. Number 3, he'll join a female-led cult and try to earn her love. He'll submit completely to the dominant female leader, hoping that her attention will heal his wound. He'll play the safe man, the helper, the bridge. He will end up joining the first cult started by the woman with the patriarchal wound. He'll end up serving her, the woman who was like really overpowering and for whom men are never enough. This man with the matriarchal wound will find that woman and it'll be a whole thing. The one thing that every single cult has in common is that the leader believes themselves to be exceptional and to have access to more knowledge than you. They consider themselves to be at the top of the pyramid, and they have a direct line to God. With true teachers, true leaders, They understand that helping others, listening to others, not judging, and holding space is our natural state of being. Everyone has access to truth. Everyone has a direct line of communication to the gods. That's normal. You do not get brownie points for not hitting children. That should be your normal state. You don't get extra credit for speaking to the gods. That's our normal states. Cult leaders will do these things. They'll be nice to somebody and then they will expect praise. They'll serve somebody. They'll give somebody homeless a meal and then they'll document it. And then they will use that content as evidence that they are better than you, as opposed to, no, that's just our natural state of being. Cult leaders live a fake life of distraction. Their desire is to get everyone dancing around them, calling them a king or a queen or an alpha or a goddess. And then you source power from the cult members. And you try to keep them confused and dancing for as long as possible because it makes you feel powerful. And it makes you think, well, if they're singing and dancing, maybe they won't notice that I'm bleeding out. The easiest way to spot this, if this is the only video that you watch from me, is that it will feel weird. Because it is weird when somebody is pretending like they are God, when someone is pretending like they are an authority on your life, which no one is except for you. So notice your energetic fields. It will feel weird when somebody is like, hey, you need to stop listening to yourself and you need to listen to me. That person is a weirdo, and I don't know how else to explain it except that. Ask me as many questions as you would like. I plan to make 2 more videos. But honestly, who knows how long this will go? But again, I just want the information out there so that when you run across somebody and they fall into one of these patterns, you can recognize it and see it for what it is, instead of thinking that this person has access to a truth that you can't access on your own. The cult leaders claim to have a divine line to God. So do you. It's not special. You are special and you are divine. You are not more special and you are not more divine. And the people who start cults will always try to convince you that they are more. They're more special. They're more unique. They have a better life experience. They have a clearer line to God. They don't. My hope is that the next time you run across one of these archetypes, you're able to notice it. And it should be said, these are archetypes sometimes that we travel through. And it's fine that we're traveling through them. It's fine that somebody's in their wounded masculine or their women feminine. That's part of the journey. When somebody starts a cult through their wounded masculine or wounded feminine, it keeps them in that space. And then for the rest of their life, they're just churning and refusing to heal this particular wound. So if you hear this and you recognize the personality type, that's fine. People go through things. But don't join any communities that these people have created because they can be really dangerous for you. And again, they never start out dangerous. They turn dangerous after a few years, after they have the funnel. So in part 2, I'm going to talk about that particular setup, about the funnel and the moment that cults turn into being incredibly damaging. Because for the first few years, they're not. For the first few years, it's a beautiful community. And at some point, it turns. So that will be part 2. Again, ask me as many questions as you would like. I'll answer as much as possible. And thank you for being here. Keep yourself safe. Don't join any cults. So I'll see you guys next time.